The Enemy, Class 12, Chapter 4, Vistas, CBSE English Core. This lesson is explained in English. The writer is Pearl S. Buck. This is part 3 of the explanation. It starts from page number 39. The links to parts 1 and 2 can be found in the description box. The Enemy highlights how a Japanese doctor saves the life of an American prisoner of war and rises above narrow national prejudices. He risks. Sadao did not reply to Hana, but after some time he went into the room where the prisoner of war was resting. He said that the man could get up and stand on his feet for 5 minutes at a time. The next day, he could stand for double the time. He said that it would be good for everyone that the man regained strength as soon as possible. He hinted that they wanted to get rid of the American as early as possible because he had become a cause of trouble for them. His words brought a hint of terror and scare on the face of the man. His face was still very pale and colorless because he was very weak. It seemed that he wanted to speak more, but he just thanked Sadao for saving his life. Sadao said that he did not need to thank him as yet. As he spoke this, he saw that the hint of scare again appeared in the man's eyes. His terrorized eyes looked like those of a scared animal. The injury marks on the neck of the boy turned the bright red in color for a while. The second incident happened in the afternoon. Hana was busy with the household work as the servants had left. She had to do a lot of hard work which she was not used to doing, so she was very tired. She saw a messenger wearing official uniform come to the house. As she saw him, her hands felt weak and she was unable to breathe. She felt that the servants must have told the authorities that they were sheltering an enemy. Hannah ran up to Sadao and she was struggling to breathe. She was unable to speak. By that time, the messenger also followed her through the garden, and he stood in front of Sadao. Hana was helpless, and she pointed her finger towards the messenger. Sadao was reading a book. When he saw Hana, he looked up. He was sitting in his office, which had a partition in it. The part of the office beyond the partition opened into the garden and was away from direct sunshine. The messenger said that Sadao had to accompany him to the palace as the old general was suffering with pain. Upon hearing this, Hana was relieved and took a deep breath. She asked that was that all for which the messenger had come. The messenger could not understand her worry. Why was Hana worried? Because they were keeping a prisoner of war in their house, right? He asked whether that was not enough and did they want any other reason for him to visit them. Hana was sorry for her reaction and said that she did not need any other reason for him to visit them. When Sadao came to say goodbye, she was in the kitchen but doing nothing. The children were asleep and she sat merely resting for a moment, more exhausted from her fright than from work. As Sadao had to accompany the messenger, he went to say goodbye to Hana. She was in the kitchen. Sadao looked carefully at Hana's anxious eyes. He was very sad and distressed and decided that he must get rid of the man for her sake. After which, Sadao went to meet the general. He narrated the entire story to him. The general, who was very weak, said that he understood Sadao's position because he had also studied in America at the Princeton University. But there were only a few Japanese who had studied in America. Sadao replied to the general that he did not care for the American except for the fact that he had operated upon him successfully. Sadao was a necessary part of the general's life. He had successfully operated upon him. The general felt that Sadao was very skilled. He asked whether he had any chance of surviving another heart attack. According to Sadao, he could not survive more than one such heart attack. The general said that then, in that case, he could not allow anything to happen to Sadao. He needed Sadao, and so he would protect him. The general's long, weak, yellowish face became expressionless because he was thinking about Sadao being arrested. He became serious, closed his eyes at the thought. He added that if Sadao was sentenced to death and he needed an operation the next day, then who would operate upon him? He would not let anything happen to Sadao. Sadao answered that there were many other surgeons in Japan, but the general did not trust anyone else. He added that the best surgeons had been trained by the Germans, and for them, the operation would be successful even if the general died. They did not have such people who could combine the harsh nature of a German and the emotional nature of an American. He said that if they would have been able to do that, then Sadao could be harsh and he could turn the prisoner to the Japanese and at the same time be emotional and not murder him during the operation. With this, the general laughed. This is an example of the general's strange sense of humor. He was very witty. Then he asked Sadao that being Japanese, could he not combine these two foreign elements? So, the foreign elements to which the general is referring is the harsh nature of a German and the emotional nature of an American. The general shook his head as he did not want to be such a person on whom a new trial would be made. Suddenly, he felt weak and emotional as he was reminded of the problems he had faced throughout his life while fulfilling his duties and responsibilities in various wars won by Japan. The general was irritated and said that the incident of the injured man reaching his house was an unfortunate one. He said that the best solution was to kill the man quietly. He would send two killers, that is, assassins, to Sadao's house during the night. Sadao did not need to know about it. As the weather was warm in those days, he wanted to keep the door of the outer partition of the man's room open. This was a suggestion. As it opened into the garden, it would give easy access to the killers while the man was asleep. Sadao agreed that the idea seemed natural. He added that they left the door of the outer partition open at night anyway. The general said that the killers were experts. They did not make any noise and killed the person in such a way that he bled inside. Bled means bleed. There would be no traces of blood on his body. That is because they were expert killers. He would even ask them to remove the dead body. Sadao thought about Hana and said that that would be very good. Sadao kept on thinking of the plan. He thought that in this way he would not be involved in the death of that American. He decided not to tell anything about his plan to Hana. She would not like the idea of the hired killers coming to their house, but such persons were essential in a place like Japan. It was the only way for the rulers to deal with the opponents. It is really very difficult to understand why Dr. Sadao saved an enemy but it is his humanity that is the primary reason. The humanity of Dr. Sadao and Hannah raise a lot of relevant questions about war, love, peace, suffering, loss, and humanity. It actually redefines the true enemy. Who is the true enemy? The true enemy is our hatred, prejudice, violence, and war. And this story redefines it by showing how love always conquers these negative emotions. If you learnt from this video lesson, do like, share, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Do press the bell icon and keep watching other videos.